over these other relatively developed societies in homicide. Now, there's much more to be said about comparative crime rates, but in this single case, and certainly homicide is a very serious and important crime, the United States leads the developed world. Next, please. What about this emphasis on innovating with respect to the rules? What about this anomic emphasis in the United States? One way we can measure that is by asking people in different countries their views of whether businesses should be more or less controlled by the government. Okay? More control of business by government means more regulation. Less control of business by government means less regulation. Here, this is a chart I constructed from data from the World Value Survey. People from countries across the world are asked a series of questions, including their views on whether government ownership of business should be increased. They were given a 9-point scale, with 9 meaning yes, absolutely, and 1 meaning And you go down to near the bottom of the chart here, and you see the United States. In this comparison, the sample in the United States was least likely to favor greater government control of business. Next slide, please. The other way we can put that question is to ask people whether they believe private ownership of business should be increased. And here what I did was simply draw out the percentage of respondents who circled 9, the extremely favorable response option. And there we see the United States with nearly 20% of the sample favoring greater private ownership compared with other societies in which the preference for greater private ownership at the extreme is considerably lower. So there does seem to be evidence, A, of higher crime rates in the serious violent crime rates in the U.S. in particular compared to other societies, and B, a greater resistance to regulation on the part of Americans compared to others. Next, please. Okay, let me end with in the next 10 minutes. As I said, we published this book in the early 90s. It's now been out in 4 editions. And over time, we and others have conducted research on some of the key propositions of the argument. And the research evidence is reasonably favorable to the argument, though there are areas in which the argument needs to be refined. I want to just describe to you one aspect of that research that's gone on with respect to this argument, and it has to do with the relationship between social welfare policies looking across nations and national homicide rates. Think about what social welfare policy means. These are policies that seek to provide income, food, shelter, or medical care for a population outside of, typically, free market auspices, so that unemployment insurance, old age insurance, or what we call Social Security insurance in the United States, health care insurance when it's provided or supported by government, would all be aspects of social welfare policy. Now, you can look across nations and measure the scope and size of their social welfare programs and policies, and some can be characterized as relatively skimpy, and others can be characterized as relatively large or generous. There are some societies in which, for example, many societies actually, in which if you're working full-time and you decide to have a baby, you're guaranteed paid leave for the number of weeks, or in some cases even months, may vary from your job, and you're guaranteed to get your job back when, after the baby has been born after a certain period of time. And in most of those societies, fathers as well as mothers are so guaranteed. Now think about that. There's a policy that seeks to strengthen the family in relation to the economy, okay? So it fits with our argument that societies with relatively more generous social welfare policies are societies in which the political system is somewhat more balanced with the economy than in those societies in which social welfare policies are skimpier, less generous. Social welfare policies in the United States compared to the countries that I had on the slide before, not surprisingly, are relatively skimpy. They certainly exist, but compared to other societies. Now, if our argument's correct, other things equal, we should expect that the broader, more generous social welfare policies are, the lower the crime rate in the society. And that's what we set out to test in some research of our own, and others have also followed up on that research. And that's what we found. We found that other things equal, that is, for example, controlling for the rate of unemployment, controlling for economic growth, controlling for the age composition of the population, the broader the scope, the more generous the benefits of social welfare policy in a society, the lower its level of homicide. And that, we concluded, is one reason, though only one, why we observe higher levels of homicide in the United States than in other societies that are in other respects comparable to our own. Okay, I want to leave some time for discussion before we have to clear out. Let me conclude on a philosophical note. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that societies dominated by, or societies with an institutional structure dominated by a free market economy are somehow bad or wrong. And societies that are, in which institutions are more balanced, are in some general sense better. That's not my belief. It's not the belief of Messner, my co-author. Here's what we are saying. We're saying, bottom line, you get what you pay for. If you